Hello and welcome to the Navy Blue Corner. I'm Ian and finally the big man has returned. It's been a while, but I'm finally joined once again by my great mate Lockie to run through and recap the 2023 AFL draft. I'm also keen to get his thoughts on all of the off-season acquisitions as we put a full stop on the 2023 season and look towards the future of what will be a massive 2024. Lockie, mate, how are you? How have you been? And have you kept up at all with all things Carlton while you've been away?
Mate, it is so good to be back. So good. Definitely have kept up with it considerably. I think this is the most I've ever been hyped in my life going into a new season. It already feels like we're going into a new season, even though we're just ramping down 2023. I'm already taking in all the Carlton propaganda I can for 2024.
I love it. Yeah, the boys back to training. Already there's been an open training. Looks like there's going to be another one in a week or two. It's exciting. Yeah. Everything is really ramping up now, and it's strange. It's been such a long year, but it's gone quick. But there's been so much that's happened. I just cannot wait to get into more 2024 content. But we've got to recap the draft. It was a big, big night once again. Couple of selections. Lockie, I throw it to you to go over and host the next little bit.
Of course, mate. Well, so we had to wait a little while, didn't we, for that first pick? I was tuning in over from
big
Europe,
first round,
enjoying the coverage. Pick 29. What did you make of that? The last pick on the first night.
Yeah, strange draft. Incredible that the first round, where every single team gets one pick, goes out to 29 in an 18-team league. But we love it. Finally, we got our selection, and it was very interesting on the night. I think for me, I was just trying to see who was going to be available at that selection. In the draft preview, I definitely had highlighted a fair few names. Most of those had gone by the end. And really the one that I was hoping that we were going to get with this pick, and the one we ended up getting, was Ashton Moyer, 187 centimeters, 85 kilos, from Glenelg. He's that kind of mid-sized general forward. And I'll kind of run through, for those that didn't hear the sort of draft preview that want to know a bit about him, I'll sort of run through a bit of a profile. He actually, in the draft combine testing, was 6th in the agility test out of everyone. So the man's got a bit of mobility, got a bit about him. And X Factor, I think, is a term that gets thrown around a lot and maybe overhyped for a few. But I think regardless, whatever you say X Factor is, this guy has that in spades. He was basically projected at the start of the year as a top 10, if not top 5 pick, due to a really impressive bottom age year, kicked about 30-odd goals and just absolutely dominated for a bottom age player, showed a lot of hype. And I think this year he really did struggle really with just consistency and overall production, which really saw him sort of fall out of those projections. He was hampered by basically a hip injury that really persisted and nagged throughout the whole season, for at least the sort of first half of it. And he really struggled to show off his athletic and aerial ability, I think, because of that. And on top of that, he was really trialed in a lot of different positions. They try, which is what they do for those that don't follow a lot of the draft. And they've seen you play for so many years that in your sort of 18 year, the last year of under 18s, they start to go, okay, well, show me other elements of what you've got. We kind of know what you are. What else can you bring to the table? He was trialed a bit in midfield, which didn't really work. They tried him off half back. He was okay with some distribution and okay in the air, but it wasn't really his spot. They had him in the forward line as well for South Australia, playing him quite deep, which I think didn't help him really get involved into the game, because South Australia weren't the best team in the carnival. And so I think him getting moved around a lot, he really wasn't able to get that kind of consistency. However, while I'm making him sound really, really bad, and I'm not getting you excited about him at all, I think in flashes, he really did show you still what he's capable of. It maybe just wasn't as frequent as it was in his bottom age year. And at his best, this guy's a genuine freak. Like, he's that medium-sized forward who he's got that leap. He's good in the air, can take good mark. And then he also is really sort of quick off his first couple of steps. And so when the ball goes inside 50, out of nowhere, he finds himself with that separation from his opponent, is in space and takes the mark. And probably the thing that's been spoken about the most with him is that he's dual-footed. He does not have a preferred foot, which is so weird. And it's not as if doesn't have a preferred foot because both of them are garbage. Both are almost like elite kicks, which is incredible for a forward, because how many times do you see, all of a sudden Harry's got a mark in the pocket and you're like, oh no, he's on the wrong side. This is an issue. Doesn't matter for Ashton because he'll just put it on the right. He'll put it on the left. It doesn't really matter. And yeah, I spoke about the X factor, and this is probably the thing that excites me the most about him. This is why I throw that term X factor on him. He's that kind of player that game of football's gone past. It's not much has happened. And then out of nowhere, in about 4 or 5 minutes, Ashton stepped up and he's kicked 4 goals and taken the game away from you in no time flat. He's got that ability to be prolific in front of goal, out of nowhere, take the game away from you. And I think that that's something that, as far as if you're looking at our list at the moment, we just don't have that kind of X factor play in that forward line, particularly that mid-size. He's been kind of, I've thrown around that Bailey Fritsch kind of esque around him as far as his playing ability. I hate player comparisons, but if you're looking at kind of mid-size forward that can take a mark but also play a bit small, there you go. That's kind of what you're looking at. He's kind of that sort of Jack Martin is what I would maybe say a little bit about, where he may go missing for a couple of games and not do a lot, but then he'll play 3 in a row where he'll kick 6 every single game. Like, that's just what those mid-sized forwards do. It's hard to make them ridiculously consistent in that sort of style. And I'm really excited about it because we don't have that mid-sized forward that can take a mark. And then we don't have someone that can really just take that game away from you. So for me, there's plenty of upside, really high ceiling player. And I just think well worth the punt for that kind of guy. And we don't have to play him right away, play him in the twos, let him get that confidence back up, and all of a sudden he'll be ready to go. And I think we could have a really, really exciting player here. What are your thoughts?
Yeah, I'm incredibly excited about it. I mean, it's easy to get swept up in the little highlights packages that they put together. You follow it, along the journey a lot more than I do, but it definitely feels like exactly the kind of player that we want to be able to add to our list. And I think it's also great to have the narrative of that ceiling play as well. It's a lot sexier to hear about a player that was destined to go a lot higher, but injury or form whatever put them off, rather than someone that's like a last minute bolter. And it's like, oh, they've come from nowhere to get drafted. It's like, oh, okay, well, it's nice to have that kind of the built-in ceiling, which I think they've done with a few of these players. So yeah, I'm pumped for it.
I think so. And it's the tough thing when you're picking, I guess, when your first pick is around that sort of 29 area, where you're going to get someone that has some sort of a problem, which is the reason they weren't that really high top 10 kind of pick. There's always a downside to it. And when really looking at that bulk of players, this draft was really different in it. Really, after that kind of top 15, you could throw a blanket from 15 to 30 on so many of these guys. It was really hard to distinguish who was the real standouts. And so clubs obviously really earmarked a few and really went deep into the planning on some of those, because there was a few players that went a bit higher than some expected, some floated around. And I think Ashton, when I'm looking at the guys around this pick, suits a need, has the upside, was projected to go around this pick anyway. So yeah, definitely plenty to like with an Ashton Moir. Really excited.
For sure. I don't think there's a reason for us to put negative bias on where they go in the draft. If you think about just our last 5 years, like some of the guys that we took in the top 5, in the top 20, and then you think of other guys like I remember Jesse Motlop was around this pick, and he's basically been straight in ever since. So very exciting. And it wasn't too long later that we took our second guy.
Yes, Billy Wilson with pick 34, 183 centimeters, 72 kilos from the Dandenong Stingrays. Basically played most of his year as a halfback, but as Nick Austin has mentioned quite a bit, did float in the midfield in that second half. And this guy was a bit of a surprise at this draft range. A lot definitely had him projected to go a little bit later. We were heavily linked with him. I didn't end up chucking him in my draft preview because it sounded more like he was going to be that kind of player that if we had a pick in the rookie draft, which it was hard to get confirmation on this at the time because all of a sudden Cottrell is on the main list. We have an injury to one of the Irish players that hadn't 100% signed. They don't really tell anyone outside of the club who's on the rookie list, who isn't. So it's quite hard to judge whether we were going to have a pick. And I thought he was going to be someone that we would float maybe to that. I didn't have him projected there because even though, look, my ratings, they're just my personal ones. I'm not Nick Austin. This is a hobby rather than an actual profession. So take of this what you want. But I had him, Billy Wilson, rated at 56. So I was definitely surprised that we went that little bit earlier. But you never know what these AFL clubs are looking at, how they project these certain players and how they rank them. There was obviously some sort of teams around this area that were looking at him. Otherwise, you suspect Carlton maybe would have looked to trade back, maybe get an extra pick for next year. But in the end, we pick up Billy Wilson, who, as I mentioned, played majority of the year off halfback, ended up in the Coates Talent League Team of the Year. So obviously a really consistent year that those in the under-18 league said, look, this guy, one of our best. And for me, when I'm looking at his strengths, his biggest strength is really that kicking. He's got such a penetrating long kick and just a really smart distributor by foot off that halfback, really helping with that defensive transition by foot, which I think is something when you're looking at our team and what we kind of need to address. Speed and foot skill is kind of that thing that we're wanting. We do have a really solid back line, but we do need some guys coming through that are a little bit younger. If you look at Sard, Williams, and even Newman, at the end of that sort of 20-year-old age range, there's not a lot of youth really coming through with high ceilings. So it makes sense to maybe look at someone who's got those attributes there. And we did struggle a bit with transition throughout the season. So to get another guy who's good by foot definitely helps. And then as Nick Austin was saying, he did move into the midfield in the second half of the year, which I think showed a little bit of versatility with him as well. Austin, he seemed very, very bullish from what he saw, and they definitely have earmarked him as that mid. I think he mentioned he's looking to train with the mids in preseason. That's what they sort of drafted him as, and it is a bit interesting because he didn't necessarily, I guess, stand out as that midfielder. He wasn't someone that, would come in and be that 30 possession player, but I felt he did in that role show off a lot more of his pace and speed and explosiveness. He's definitely got that pace. I think off halfback, he maybe didn't show it as much, but in the midfield, it was a bit more exciting there. And, I think that there is something that you can see a bit of ceiling, I think, in this guy because of the raw attributes that he has. We look at the midfield and what we need. We need pace. We need guys who can use the football well. And while he maybe didn't have that full year of, okay, he's a midfielder ready to go straight into that position, when you're looking at his strengths and he's got the pace, he's got the foot skills, he finds the ball, I think that's what I'm excited to see, that he's demonstrated those raw skills, those raw traits.
Yeah.
And Austin and co know these guys better than anyone. Their draft track record has been incredible. So when we lack those kind of skills and Wilson's got those in spades, I think that's sort of what I'm really excited about. And I know what you're asking because I've talked him up a bit, but why did me and so many others rate him so low? And why did we choose him above others? And kind of touched on it a little bit, but I think, while he does have that breakaway speed, he didn't probably utilize it as much off halfback because he sort of looked to use the foot skills by first. He was that kind of, I've got the ball, I'm looking to use my my kicking to transition out rather than that kind of tuck the ball under the arms and just take the game on. And I think compared to some of the other defenders in this draft class, he maybe lacked that little standout quality because there's sort of the three things for those halfbacks. It's sort of that speed, which is the run and carry. You've got the foot skills, and then you got the intercept ability. And he definitely had the kicking. He probably didn't show the pace as much, where some of the others were really exciting with the way that they'd take the game on, just running through players. And others had that maybe intercept ability where they kind of rated them a little bit higher. It was a very deep draft as far as those kind of halfback intercept players. And then I guess in the midfield, half a season maybe isn't that sample size big enough that a lot of clubs look at and go, okay, we know he can now do this at the AFL level. It's hard to sometimes see what's translatable where they do kind of see these guys playing. And when he's not that guy that went in and got 30 odd possessions, kicked a couple of goals and you go, great, this guy's a midfielder, absolutely set. Instead, he probably just showed off those little flashes of his strengths. And like I mentioned with that pace, but what probably excites me, and I haven't covered the draft for a very, very long time. It's probably only been the last 3 or 4 years that I've really tried to dive into it. And so what I'm learning, and the big thing I keep trying to grow every season, is look at the skills that I guess are translatable from under 18 footy to the AFL, because it's very easy to watch a kid play footy and go, oh, this guy's electric, this guy's unreal. But then all of a sudden they take that step and you just never see what you saw, whether it was they weren't tall enough or that kind of skill just doesn't translate because of the contested side of the game or whatever it may be. But one thing that does excite me is that this guy was just known as the accumulator. You know, no matter where you put him, he'd have no issue finding the ball and constantly being involved in the game. When he was playing halfback, you'd always see him win the footy. In the midfield, he was doing it as well. And for me, that's something you can't really teach, just that footy IQ, knowing where to be and winning the football. And that's something that for me does definitely translate to AFL. That I'm definitely excited about. So yeah, for me, ability to win the ball, stay engaged in the play. He's got the pace. He's got the foot skills. Definitely has a lot to work on and will take some time to develop. But I think, yeah, just those raw attributes and with that scope to build and develop, he's got something that we currently lack. And yeah, very excited to see what these Nick Austin and co have really earmarked in this guy.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, you took the words right out of my mouth in terms of Austin and the team. Like there's no reason right now for us to not back their judgment with something like this. So I love your analysis and it's exciting. Hopefully he'll be able to have a Binns-esque kind of season in the VFL next year and just, dominate and show why, that they believe in him.
100%.
And then one more. So then we get to the rookie draft. We got a second Carroll. That was confusing.
I loved the social media team were across it as well with the second Carroll, another Matt with a C name that's similar to Cottrell. There's too many. We've got to figure this out. But yeah, Matt Carroll comes in, 188 centimeters, 81 kilos from the Sandy Dragon. So looks like we're picking from some really well-established clubs, the Sandy Dragons, Dandenong Stingrays, teams that seem to just to keep developing great talent every single year, get a lot of kids drafted. And this was a bit more of your general defender, someone we were really linked with as well. So this one maybe wasn't a massive, massive surprise. And I'll go through him because I don't think a lot of people know a lot about him. He is a left-footed defender, and I would say really well-rounded defender. He's someone that loves to get the ball moving, whether it is by foot or using a bit of his pace to rebound. Equally, I think what I do love about him, it's his ability to defend and lock down. That's been really one of his impressive attributes throughout the year. He's height at 188 centimeters as well, along with his leap and a bit of speed. He's really good on the ground, but then it allows him to kind of play that tall or small. I'm thinking, and don't hate me for this comparison. As I said, I hate player comparisons, but I try to make it easier. It's kind of like a Lockie Plowman.
I knew you were going to say
gap that he's looking to fill on the list. And it's basically just because of that. Like if you're looking at our depth chart at the moment, we got a lot of sort of small rebounding, quick defenders. We got some tall guys. We don't really have maybe someone that's known for a bit more of their defensive qualities that can do a bit of both. And so for me, I think Matt Carroll really sort of lands in that. And his best was really good. It's just that he probably showed that more in sort of glimpses and patches rather than just being that consistent superstar player throughout the year, which is why he goes in the rookie draft and not the national draft. For me, he's definitely more of that project player. He's got, again, those raw traits, versatility in defense. And I think what probably hampers him why he went so late is it's that kind of jack of all trades, master of none, to be a little bit, I guess, rude towards him in that he was just really solid in every single area, but didn't really have that one area where you go, oh, wow, this is the standout. And when you're looking at the draft, trying to rank a lot of these kids, teams just tend to look for someone who has that one real key strength in him. Maybe if he was a really stronger rebound defender by foot or had something that was his real key point of difference, you'd see him go a lot higher. But that kind of excites me that he is just this already well-rounded player that, he's going to take a bit of time to develop. But if he's got that really strong base where he can defend, he can move the ball a little bit more, I think it's a really strong player to put some time into. He's got that speed, he's got that ball use, and that's just another thing that we've clearly looked to target in the off-season. And, as I mentioned earlier with a Billy Wilson, we've been asking for that sort of smaller defender that can lock down, but also looking at the age profile, Newman, Sard, Williams. They've all starting
Totally.
to get on. We need that next crop coming through. Not to say these guys are going to retire next year, but you've always got to regenerate the list, look at who's coming through. And I almost have him as that Nick Newman-esque kind of replacement in, 5 or so years. And at the rookie selection, it's such low risk. This guy could be on the list for a couple of years. He might not develop, and oh well, you took a punt. But yeah, we don't have that lockdown small that can maybe play a bit higher, that is that defensive first, but still can move the ball and is a good user by foot. So for me, as far as a suiting a need, someone you can throw on the list for a couple of years, I think it's well worth the punt.
Totally. Yeah, no, I don't have too much to add to that. I think I felt like we both were pretty comfortable with the guys that made way for the list spots this year, like, guys that have had a bit of a crack and just want some fresh blood in there. So why not? Let's see what Matt can do with a few years of development. And speaking of those years of development, I feel like this is always the thing that's on my mind around the draft time, because God, the depth chart is looking pretty hot right now. Where do you see these guys fitting this year? Particularly Ashton and Billy. Do you think we'll see them this year? If I remember correctly, so it was just Cowan and Hollins last season that made debuts, right? Binns didn't get a go.
Yeah.
So do you think we'll see both Ashton and Billy this year? What's your prediction?
It's going to be very interesting. Definitely to just touch on him here. I think Carroll will take some years. I do not expect to be seeing him at all, particularly because we've got depth in those positions. Billy Wilson, I reckon, will have that kind of, hopefully that binge year where you don't have to play him. He can just develop. I also, from where I sort of see his under 18 year to a Binns, I also have him a little bit, I guess, behind in just his level. I was really impressed with Jackson Binns last year. Felt he was a little bit more ready to go, but wouldn't surprise me if, because he's played a lot of that half back, I know wings are pretty sorted, and obviously Binns takes that spot above him. Wouldn't surprise me if he gets, 1 or 2 games, start him on the wing, start him on the outside just to get a little taste of it. But looking at our list currently, we really don't need to be playing a lot of these kids. We can just allow them to develop. We've got enough depth really in all these positions. We don't need to throw these guys in. We've got other players that can play those roles. So it would surprise me if Billy Wilson does play. And that's not a knock on him. That's not saying that he's not good enough to, just that we don't need to. Even Binns played so well VFL all year. We wanted him to come in at stages, just didn't need to. And I think Moya definitely has a higher scope to play that role. Just when you're looking, I guess, at our depth chart in that front half, there is obviously some talent there. It's just a little bit more wide open, I think, for competition. Like, Jack Martin is in that kind of mold. Can you still trust Martin to play a full season? Same with Cunningham. Silvani's had a couple of issues as well throughout the year. Fantasia as another. There is a bunch of players that have some injury issues throughout. And along with that, when you're looking at, always Durden, you can throw Fogarty into that. Like, how many of these guys are nailed on best 22? You can count on them every single week to know that, yes, they're in our best team to win us a flag. It's still up in the air, I think, for a few of these players, which is maybe scope for Ashton to come in and play. But weirdly, I would say if he plays 1 or 2 games this season, that's unreal. Otherwise, just let him play in the twos. We're at this stage finally as a club, maybe like a Sydney and Geelong have for years. Let these guys have 2 or so years in the VFL, and then all of a sudden, when they're primed and ready to go, been dominating, then you can just throw them into AFL level, and the whole AFL goes, where the hell did this guy come from? Did they pick him up this year? Oh, he's been on their list for 3 years. All of a sudden, he's ready to go. It's an exciting time, I think, for us, where we can really work on the development. We don't have to rush. If we throw him in for a couple of games to get a taste, maybe like a Lockie Cowan, great, go for it. But for me, it's just let them play in the VFL. So I don't really expect any of these guys to play next year, just out of we've got enough talent for me that we don't have to. But Ashton would be the one that if he ends up playing 5 or so games this season, or if he even comes into the starting lineup all year, wouldn't surprise me, because he definitely has that real high-end talent when at his best.
Yeah, I love that. I remember a year ago, we were kind of saying that same thing for the first time about we felt like we were getting into that position. And obviously it didn't turn out that way. Holland's
Mm.
played a massive role this year, which was awesome. But yeah, it finally feels like we're in that right spot. Exactly like you said. We can play the right guys now and let these guys develop properly, which is great. And so yeah, I very much enjoyed watching the first round of the draft, particularly after hearing you speak on it. And so I had a fair few guys in my head as they were, getting ticked off. It's like, okay, it's not going to be him, not going to be him. So was there anyone that you felt kind of like we just missed them before we took them, or anyone that kind of stood out as someone that you maybe, if you had your Austin hat on, you would have taken?
It was probably that Billy Wilson pick that surprised me a little bit. I think going into the draft, I wasn't very high on us picking him with our second selection, which is just because when I'm looking at where I sort of ranked players personally, I thought there was still a lot of talent available, and I was maybe hoping a guy like Billy Wilson could be picked up maybe as that rookie spot or whatever you try to do later. So for me, the one guy I really was hoping to pick up, who was available, who went the next pick after the Billy Wilson selection, was Cooper Simpson. Ended up going to Freo. He was, probably the guy I'd really earmarked as someone I was definitely hoping us to get. He's a 181 centimeter midfielder from Dandenong Stingrays. And reason I was kind of eyeing him off was I thought we lacked a bit in that midfield depth. I really wanted us to address that. He had a bit of pace about him, bit of burst away, really clean hands, and could also, hit the scoreboard. He was that player that it looks like Austin has sort of earmarked as Billy Wilson. So that kind of is the interesting component there, where I maybe saw Wilson as more of that. He's just going to be that halfback kind of player. So I wanted a midfielder, but if Austin is looking at Wilson being that pacey outside adding to the midfield crop, then look, he's going to know this a lot more than me, so it's hard for me to really criticize his selection. But Cooper Simpson definitely was that midfielder I was looking at. And then because I assumed that Billy would be a bit more of a defender, it was probably then guys like an Archie Roberts, who I had earmarked, who really was someone that struggled to get selected, ended up going pick 54, someone that most had projected a lot higher in the draft. I think I had him, I'm just trying to look at my rankings. I had him 26, Archie Roberts.
Wow,
so going a lot later in that. Ended up going to Essendon. He was a bit more of that really good ball use, intercept defender that I thought could help our defense out. Maybe be that Matt Carroll selection, that Nick Newman kind of replacement. The other as well, looking at pace to run off that halfback. Another Essendon selection. So unfortunately, Essendon's picked up all the guys I wanted, which maybe isn't the best for me to now have to hate these guys completely. But it was Lumon Luel, who was someone that just had that real... He was the sort of grab the ball, tuck under the arm, and just take the game on by trying to run through everyone. That real Adam Sard kind of aspect that I thought maybe we could utilize in defense. But now that you start to listen to the way Austin spoke about these players, you start to understand what they're looking at. As much as I maybe wanted them, and I think Cooper Simpson's still someone I would have maybe taken over Billy Wilson, just because where they are right now. I can definitely understand why we took the players we did, and I do quite like the selections in the end. But yeah, probably Cooper Simpson's the one that if I could have made the selection, that would have been it. But, you wait and see. 10 years' time, Cooper Simpson's never played a game of AFL footy. Billy Wilson's the captain of the Carlton and won about 3 Brownlows, and we'll scrub this video from the internet.
Yeah, exactly right. Let's earmark that and see how we go. And then you can either, it's really win-win. We either just remove this from the internet, or you can use this on your interview, your list management interview, which would be good. So that's the draft, I guess.
Definitely. And we've spoken about it a lot. That first night was very, very long. There was a lot of picks taken. So I want to almost take a bit of the Carlton lens off for a little bit. I want to get your thoughts. Because this has been a hot topic about the academy bids, the father-sons. Obviously, there were all those sort of concession and free agency, compo picks, all of that kind of nonsense that made this first round blow out to pick 29. There were 29 picks in the first round. Only 35 more picks were taken after the first round, which is kind of insane when you think about it. If you thought the first round was 18 in your head and 35 are taken after that, it's insane. So what are your kind of thoughts, if you have any, on, I guess, how compromised the draft is, how it's going, and your sort of thoughts on how these academy bids are working out?
I'm definitely very keen to hear your perspectives on these because I don't feel super passionately about them. I think one of the things for me, like I saw some of the discourse on social media about like how, you know, a first round pick should be more of like a important glorified thing. Like, oh, like a pick 29, the first round, that's ridiculous. I don't really get that aspect of it. Like, I don't know. I always find it a bit strange. Like, even when you and I are kind of talking about things and we're like, oh, this player is probably worth a first round pick. Yeah. And it's like, that is such a broad thing. And this isn't just an AFL thing as well. It's the same in the NBA where they'll talk about a first round pick. Well, the difference between pick 1 and pick 29 is massive. So that kind of just using that kind of verbiage never really stands out to me. But I'm excited to hear, or excited, maybe not the right word. I'm keen to hear what you think about the academy stuff, particularly. Yeah. Father-son for me, I think, is a really great, unique part of our game. And I don't necessarily have a massive problem with the system and how that works with the bidding and the like. But academy is a bit more of a part that I don't really understand fully. So I don't know how much it's actually compromising the whole league.
Yeah, it's tough because it blows out so much. 29 picks first round. It's not great. And I agree. I think father-sons in isolation, I love it. I don't have an issue with it. It feels as if all these things only ever rear their head when it becomes a big thing higher up in the draft. Like, no one really cared about father-sons all of a sudden until, Dacos is becoming the first pick in the draft kind of thing. And then you're going, oh no, like the best talent here. Same with Ashcroft. It's like, okay, we've had a couple years now where the best talent in the draft is a father-son already going to be chosen by another team. But how many years does that really happen? Like, you look at every other year, how many times was the overall number one player a father-son? So I feel it's hard to really do much with that. And I love that we do have it. I think it's such a cool thing to, I guess, reward. It's a weird, kooky part of our game that I'm happy to keep. I'm like, father-sons, you're going to get an outlier, go for it. The academy is the really interesting bit. Again, it feels like it's been a bit of an anomaly. We had this sort of NGA pick, which is basically the academies to try and really quick fire, go through this without going into it too much. There's almost like a couple of different kinds of academies. So basically there's the northern ones that Sydney, Gold Coast, Brisbane, GWS all have, which basically wherever a bid comes in, they can match it. Because we're trying to grow the game in markets that aren't really football markets compared to Victoria, South Australia, WA, where the number one sport is footy. Trying to get someone to play footy, really easy. Everyone's doing it. So they're trying to really pump money into these academies, try and get players that maybe wouldn't have played AFL unless this academy existed. So for them, they can match a bid anywhere. Whereas everyone else, it's like the NGA academy. You can only match a bid if the player falls outside pick 40. That's the system. Basically, it was after Jamara Ugle-Hagan was being able to get that bid matched, kind of changed the whole system. So now only the Northern academies for those New South Wales and Queensland teams still can match bids elsewhere. And I think that that's a good thing. I think when you're really breaking it down and the access to talent that these guys do have because of that, then, and you're looking at the go home factor, all of these things you hear all the time in the draft. How many players always want to leave these interstate teams and go to Victoria or go to South Australia, go to WA? When do you ever hear someone's like, I want to go back to New South Wales? You don't, because there's no one from New South Wales. So I think that's an area where we do need to keep strengthening and allowing these guys to build the academies, particularly when you're looking at like your Gold Coast, your GWS, that they don't have access to father-sons either because they're so new. So they don't have that facet of the game. So I think allowing these guys a mechanism that kind of helps them a little bit more than other clubs is a good thing. It's probably just how the bids are getting matched. So I think for me, when I was going to say that, I just don't love that with the point system we have, you can match a bid that would be, say, pick 4 with a bunch of picks that are, let's say, they're all third rounders. You've got
Totally.
every single pick in the third round that you've traded, and now you can manipulate it that way. I feel like that's where we need to change this. I don't know particularly what it is. Do we need to make it, if you want to match a bid, let's say it's pick 5, you need to have a pick that is within 10 places of that, plus the points to bid. That way, pick 5's value is kind of kept at that, and you're not going to have something where the doggies, they know that they're, say, I know this is different with their father-son, but this is kind of the example that I don't love, where they know that he's going to go in that first round. Their pick is a little bit around that. Basically, their selection is going to be where Jordan Croft is going to get selected. So they end up getting rid of that. They trade up above to get Gold Coast pick that Gold Coast don't need, because they don't want to be losing that. They want some better value. All of a sudden, the doggies get their early pick. Then they get their father-son, and Gold Coast has gotten rid of a pick that they don't need. And it just starts to get really convoluted. So I think there needs to be maybe a bit of a change in how you're matching bids, just so we don't get, pick 5s going for picks 70, pick 34, pick 28, and you're just bundling all these nothing picks that no one wants anyway to allow you to get those players. I feel like that's the mechanism that maybe needs to be shifted. But I don't know. How many years has Gold Coast had academy selections that have been really high? That's the thing. Like, is this an outlier? Is this only going to be the season that they happen to have 4 in the top, 30 or so? Maybe. Because I can't recall how many amazing Gold Coast players they've had. But probably just that. That's my kind of thing I think I'd change, if anything.
I like that. I think you're going to run me through our off-season plan after this episode. And if one of them is a 1-hour brainstorm of us fixing that system, I'm more than happy to get into the nitty-gritty, because I think it is very interesting. I think there's lots of different ways I could go with it.
Yeah. And I think the bigger thing that I'll touch on really, really quickly that annoys me about probably the first round blowing out so much that I think can be quickly changed is just the free agency compensation. If you just get rid of that,
it's a whole
which I think we all agree on, like, why reward someone who can't keep a player? You get rid of that, and all of a sudden the first round doesn't blow out as much because North don't get 10,000 compensation picks, St. Kilda don't get theirs, and all of a sudden it's a bit fairer. First round isn't as compromised, and you're able to get access to those sort of top end talents, which I think is very, very fair. But that's enough talking about that. Give me your thoughts on it, those listening. What are your thoughts on the bidding and the compromise draft? Because next year's going to be like that as well. There's a lot of father-sons coming through. We've got 2 of them. So watch them change the rules just as we are about to exploit it for once. But give me your thoughts in the comments on YouTube or at socials at Navy Blue Corner. And also give me your thoughts on who we drafted. What did you think? Were you happy with Austin's business? Would you have liked us to get someone else? Very keen to have some discussions in the comments here or on whatever social media you interact with us from. And mate, don't even have to search for it at Navy Blue Corner. It's in the show notes in the description. So just click the link there and engage with us. But let's go back to Carlton. Now we've brought the players in. Let's try and take a little bit of a look towards the next season. Let's have a look at a lovely updated depth chart, which we always absolutely love. So I kind of want to break this down, get your thoughts on it. If you agree, if you're listening to this in podcast form, there's a great visual of this that'll be on your screen on YouTube if this ends up making this section a little bit easier to comprehend. But this is another one I want your engagement with. If there's a player that you think should be rated higher on here or lower or in a different position, this is where the discussion can be had, because we also want to see if there's any other list holes that maybe we did not deal with in the offseason that maybe makes our offseason not as good as we tried to go towards our 17th premiership in 2024. But
lock it in.
Let's go into it. So key defenders in green, all of these are basically best 22. Then you got the yellow is your kind of fringe, and then that sort of orangey color is going to be your extra depth or developing youth players. So let's look at it. Let's see how strong we are. Jacob Wiedering and McGovern I kind of have as my 2 key defenders. I know I copped a bit of flack in the comments on one of the other videos saying McGovern isn't really a key defender, and I do agree with you to an extent with that one. But in the weird way that we kind of have our defense structured at the moment, it's really Wiedering, Gov, and then you've got either Kemp or Marchbank. So for me, I'm saying that McGovern is
Yeah.
almost your second key defender because we're not
I'm with
playing
you.
anyone else there. Depth for that is Lewis Young as your next, and then you got Durden there as your developing. Kemp is who I have as that starting third tall. Marchbank's
Agreed.
there, ready to play. And then you got Dom as the developing. What are your kind of thoughts on the sort of taller key defensive stocks there, Lockie?
Not a lot of change. It's
Mm.
that's where we're at. And I mean, we can talk about this. I mean, I guess this is what the depth chart is for. Who knows how many games we get out of guys like Gov and Marchie this season? Fingers crossed it's like last year and we keep this health up and those three just kind of put it together with Marchie as the fourth guy. And we did see a bit of the team playing with all four of them as well, which could happen. But I like where you've put this here.
Yeah, I think you're going to find that depending on the opposition, we might have a few of these guys floating in and out the way it's going to be played. But I thought, let's keep it simple. Let's go the two. Let's go the other one, sort of third tall, and then the other defenders. But yeah, I think there's probably scope, and we probably didn't address it here, but maybe another key defender somewhere, just maybe because I don't trust Dom's development just yet. The injuries, like you mentioned, where's Lewis Young's development at? Came from a really good season to a pretty poor one last year. Is there scope for that? Potentially, but there really wasn't many people that I think were obvious to bring in. So I think they're happy with that for now. We'll see how it plays out. General defenders is where we are stacked. Sard, Williams, Newman, Boyd, and then I got Chincotta as that fringe at the moment is maybe the controversial one, but I just thought Boyd probably adds a little bit more ceiling as well. But we're going to see a lot of change throughout this. And then Cowan and Carroll as those kind of next players coming through. Thoughts, Lockie?
Yeah, you definitely could argue Chincotta above Boyd on that depth chart, but I'm with you as well. And I mean, Cowan, they've got him in the new jersey. Wouldn't be surprised if he starts pushing as well. But this feels like one of our strongest parts on the field in terms of depth.
Yeah, I definitely agree. And I think Cowan's someone I'm still, long-time listeners know I'm very high on this guy.
Oh, you love the
when
move.
he finally comes in, I think he can kind of add to this where he can play a little bit taller. Maybe he swings a little bit into that third defender. But we got time to develop these kids, which is very, very exciting. This is probably my biggest problem area looking at the rucks. DeConing's my number one. Pitt is number two. Then you got the development there of O'Keefe and Murkov as your kind of next few there. Lockie, very interested to hear what you think on the rucks. Do we have enough? Do you throw Silvani into the depth chart?
I was just going to say.
What do you make of the ruckman?
I was going to say that exact comment. No love for Sauce as a ruck depth man.
Well, Lewis Young, does he go into the depth chart?
Exactly. Gosh, we just have this discussion every year, don't we? TDK and Pitt. What is the go there? It's you'd like to think that we have one more guy on the list in this spot, but it's such a hard thing because if it's like an established guy, an established ruckman that we bring in, so either they're better than TDK or Pitt, which means the entire season Pitt is playing in the twos, everyone's healthy. That feels kind of strange. Or do we bring in an established guy that's not as good as either of them? That also feels a bit unlikely. Like, why would someone come to Carlton knowing that they're the third if they're an established ruckman?
Yeah.
So it's like, well, then we've got to get the developing guy. And we've already got two developing guys.
Yeah, it's strange. It's a strange lineup. I think the development of DeConing in the second half of the year, particularly in finals, he is well and truly now my number one. Incredibly excited for him.
Yeah.
And I still think Pitt was playing injured for most of the season. I really want to see what he can do if he is 100% ready to go. Seeing how strapped his knee was for the finals campaign, I was like, I don't know if this guy's ready to go. Will be a weird one if they do get rid of the sub and just make it an extra man on the bench. Yeah. I reckon you'll start to see a lot of teams just go with the two rucks, and it probably allows us a bit more flexibility in that area to deal with it in that sense. But I do agree it's an odd ruck kind of setup because you've then just got two really raw guys in Murkov and O'Keefe being that developing piece. I would love to have just one other person on this list, maybe instead of Murkov, which is really maybe harsh to see, but I just don't see his development there currently. He's now got the health issue as well. Yeah. Wouldn't surprise me if come the start of the season, he may be, I don't know. I'm just speculating clearly, but if his health isn't still 100% and you end up putting him on the long-term injury list or something, opens up a list spot, that wouldn't surprise me because it's such a serious thing. You don't want to mess around with the heart at all, and you're taking no risk with that completely. But I don't know. I think I'd probably prefer us to have maybe a bit more of a veteran ruck, someone who maybe got delisted, or just someone who's more AFL ready to go. That way, if De Koning's injured or Pitterneck gets injured, who's had some troubles battling through, we're not having to throw Silvani or Lewis Young in because I don't think Hudson or Murkov are ready. And I would just like to have a break in case of emergency, someone else there, just in case. But I do understand that then maybe hampers the development of these guys in the twos because you're taking time away from them. So it's a tough balance. But depth-wise, it's still probably somewhere we lack just that one extra ready-made body.
Could be a mid-season job.
Who knows? Looking to the midfield, this is somewhere we lost a bit of depth. We lost an Ed Curnow, a Dow. You could maybe throw Fisher into this as well. But I think the top end of this list is incredible. Cripps, Walsh, Chera, Hewitt. Throw Doherty into that as well. And then unfortunately, I've got Kennedy just outside of that best 22 at the moment. That's maybe controversial from me. Then the next few guys there as the depth, Elijah Hollands, Jack Carroll, and throw Billy Wilson into this. Do you think we've replaced enough in the depth chart, knowing that we've unfortunately had some really bad luck the last 2 seasons with a lot of injuries, midway, end of the season, having to throw their sort of magnets around a little bit with who goes through this position. Now we've lost a couple of that, never really replaced Setterfield. Now Dow and Curnow are gone. Are you happy with the replenishment of the midfield?
I am happy. I mean, you make a good point about the magnets. Like there's a bunch of guys that have played midfield roles that aren't in this list right now, like Fogarty, like Cunningham. Like they're guys that were getting pretty consistent goes in the midfield when they were playing, just kind of being all over the place. Yeah, I don't think the Kennedy thing is that hot a thing. I guess it's between him and Hewitt, most people would say, about who's up there. Holland is super exciting. Like that's my most exciting part for me is like would not be surprised if he finds a way to become best 22 by the end of this season. So that's the thing. It's the ceiling play. We knew that it was Ed Curnow's time. Dow, there was some believers left, but it didn't feel like he was going to be a premiership mid.
Yeah, it does feel like we can move the magnets around enough and cover this. And you're hoping you don't have as many kind of freak injuries as we have had. And it's not as if these players are injury prone. It's just what happens. You don't expect to have, Walsh, Chera, Kennedy, all these guys out at once. It shouldn't happen. And hopefully it doesn't happen. But yeah, Elijah Hollands is the exciting one to see how he can fit into this team. And do you have another year of Jack Carroll's development? Does he take that next step in there? And I think it's enough. And you're going to get some injuries here or there. So Kennedy being at next in, he's going to be playing a fair chunk of footy because you're going to hopefully also be able to manage the team in the second half of the season where if Cripps is looking a bit battered, just take him out for a couple of games. Well, your top 4, that's sewn up. And Kennedy can get his couple of games there. And then moving on to the wingers, we've got plenty here. Plenty I probably didn't even throw into this because there's so much depth in it. But Akers and Hollands are kind of the main 2 there. You've got Doherty who can also play in that position. Cottrell is another that floats throughout. And obviously Jackson Binns is the next guy developing, could find his way into the best 22 at some stage. You're very happy with the depth we have there now, when it seemed a couple of years ago we had no one.
Yeah. Well, I mean, on that topic, put your crystal ball on. Do you see Ollie Hollands as a kind of a career wingman, or can you see him becoming a mid?
I definitely see scope for him to move into the midfield in the next couple of years, particularly because that's what he did in his under 18 career. He was sort of splitting it between both. He's obviously just so light framed that it might take a couple of years for him to do it. But the way he tackles, the way he attacks the footy, there's definitely scope for him to do it. Just give him a couple more years. It wouldn't surprise me if this year we start to see a little bit of it in flashes.
Me too.
But it's the really exciting thing that he can do a bit of both. And we've got Sheridan Walsh that can rotate on the wing. Cunningham can float up there if you need him to. And then you got, Camperelli twins coming through next year that can also play on the wing. Like there's plenty of players that can rotate through here. And I like that it's not a rotate through the fact that, we've got no wingers, you can maybe play that position.
No.
You can play wing, you can also play somewhere else. We're sorted. So it's very positive in that sense. Probably the other position apart from ruck that I don't love the depth in is probably the key forwards. Charlie Curnow and Harry Mackay, obviously so far away and ahead of anyone else, even in the league, as far as the best buddy forwards in there. Tom de Koning I've got as that next kind of piece as a key forward in there, particularly from what I saw in the finals, kicking those couple of goals against Melbourne, really stood up. Then it's really just Harry Lemmy, Hudson O'Keefe kind of playing that ruck forward split as well. You could maybe throw Silvani into that if you'd need to. It's kind of where he's played as the next there. Key forwards, take me through it, Lockie.
Yeah, this is my column of concern more than rucks personally, mainly just because of how I think an injury here affects our whole team structure. Like, I don't want to speak it into existence at all, but for me, Charlie's the guy on our team who I'd least like to see missing games. I just feel like the run-on effects of that, for what it would mean for Harry to be the number one guy again without another big kind of option next to him, it's scary. So it would be nice for one of those orange tabs to be a guy where you feel a bit more confident that they could come in and do the role properly. I guess you could say Jay Sauce, but it's just not really him.
Yeah.
So let's just pray for good health in this position for our for number 17.
Yeah, you've really explained that so perfectly with the way I think about it. It's you get one injury and all of a sudden you're throwing someone else out of a position to play there just because Lemmy and O'Keefe just aren't ready to really take that mantelpiece. And it's tough. It's hard to bring someone in to the club that is, I guess, somewhat AFL ready, because who's coming in to play behind those two? And that's why I think that Brodie McLaughlin was the guy I was earmarking who got delisted from Gold Coast. He was tied as the highest goals kicker in the VFL, as someone that, look, he's old enough to jump in and play some football. But he's been delisted, so it's fine. He's not expecting to play. So that's kind of the guy I had earmarked if we had a list spot, and maybe we could have used that Matt Carroll spot instead. And I still think that's probably where I would have looked at, just because I think that depth-wise we needed it a little bit more. But they obviously have faith that things are going to work out and that they've got enough players to come in. Yeah, my concern is just you get an injury and you're taking de Koning out of the ruck, or you're taking... you're playing a bit smaller, but I don't know, maybe, and I'll just had this thought now, maybe this is where us bringing in an Ashton Moyer, having Jack Martin fit, bringing in Fantasia, we can almost change up the way that forward line works. You've seen the success that teams like Collingwood have had with playing a bit of a smaller forward line. Melbourne have been able to do it to an extent as well with some of their smalls. Maybe we can do that because we have brought in a few of these mid-sized players. Maybe we won't have as many issues. But yeah, definitely an interesting thing. Worst case, there is an injury. And now, general and half and small forwards. Very exciting. I feel like we've got a lot of depth here, but maybe not the bona fide locked-in best 22s yet. It's a lot up for conjecture, which is going to be fun. Very keen to get your thoughts on who's best 22. Looking at Jack Martin, Cottrell, and Cunningham. Next, I've kind of got your Silvani. And then we don't really know, I guess, where Elijah Hollands fits, where he is best, I guess, position and ability-wise. Fogarty, a bit stiff to be this far down. I think I'm just looking at ceiling for every other player. If Fogarty comes in, I don't have an issue, but he probably just isn't as flashy as the others. And then Ashton Moyer, I'm just allowing him to develop down there. And then you've got in the small forwards, Motlop and Owies with Fantasia stiff to be fringe, but I just want to see it first before I have him above Owies, but that can be a quick fix. Durden is very well in contention as well, and then I've thrown Fogarty in that because we know he can kind of play both. What are your thoughts on, I guess, that best 22 fringe? Who's kind of in the mix, and where do you see them going into the season?
So fascinating. So many different ways that people could structure these rankings, I feel like Fogarty, I definitely agree on kind of talent and as good of a player as he is kind of being here, but we've seen that the club likes the
Yeah.
role that he can play and how he
Yes.
brings something different to these guys. So super interesting.
Mm.
I'm so with you with Fantasia, but I would not be surprised in the slightest if he plays in the first game, if he just trains the house down in the preseason and he's just gonna, bring again something a little bit different. So yeah, it's a very exciting little section here. It'll be interesting to see how it plays out, and we can reflect on this. Like the Motlop always Durden debate, even just with those three, I feel like all fans have a different kind of way that they see them right now,
Yeah.
and then in the next few years as well.
Yeah, I've definitely probably got Motlop a little bit above all of those. But I can
agree.
definitely see if Fantasia's fit and back to the form he played a couple of years ago, he becomes number one, all of a sudden. And then
Yep.
it's almost a battle of, well, what's the makeup? How many of these mid-size half forwards are we having? How many smalls are we playing? Does Durden take that next step? And yeah, I love the touch on Fogarty there because while if you're just naming a player, who would I rather have? Yeah, it's probably Cunningham, but if the role that Fogarty has allows someone else to play better, then the way we saw at the back end of last year, then Fogarty's in that team. And so it's such an interesting debate.
Right.
I'm very keen to have it in the comments and see what you guys think. Who's going to be in that best 22? But yeah, if I was to say, sort of like one last recapping thought, Lockie, on the depth and how the list sits now that we've had all the acquisitions happen, how are you feeling about the team going into 2024?
Definitely never felt more confident about a Carlton team in our lives. It feels like it just feels like it's our time to me. So it's very exciting.
It does. And I want to get you quick. I know we've touched on them a little bit, but I want to get your real thoughts quickly on Fantasia. Want to go a bit deeper because kind of definitely knew all your thoughts about Hollands, everything else. Fantasia was the one that came out of nowhere. What do you make of his acquisition? Are you excited? Are you starting to go, holy shit, we've got the best forward ever? Are you wary of the injuries? Give me your thoughts because I think a lot of either don't trust him, he's not going to play, or, oh, wow, what a bargain. We've brought in a superstar.
Yeah, I'm not wary at all. I just, considering, you have to just take the whole situation into perspective, I think, with these things. What we gave up to bring him in. What, a Josh Honey list spot. Like the list spot of one of these guys that we delisted. We know, and I know it has been a few years, and that's the first rebuttal, but he has a track record. He has kicked bags of 4 and 5 in games. He can take over a game in the forward line. And we need goal kickers. And like I said, I just wouldn't be surprised if with our being in a new environment, the new staff, that maybe he just becomes a guy that plays every game this season. And it's like the bargain pickup of the year. And I think of a guy like Markov last year for Collingwood. I remember when they picked him up, it's like, he's not going to play. I just don't see how that's like, it is so far down for them. But he had a role, and then once he got in, he couldn't get out. And I just don't see why that couldn't be the case for Fantasia with us. So such a low risk for a high reward for me. Exactly what I wanted us to do with that spot.
Yeah, I love it. I think it's good. And yeah, even like a Chin Cotter for us, a guy that if he doesn't play, all of a sudden he plays most games for the year and really carves out a great role in defense for us. And yeah, I agree. It's such low risk. We gave up nothing. Would you rather Honey or Philp or Fantasia? And the only thing I think I've mentioned in another episode is just it was the 2 years that was a little bit, I'm not sure I love locking him in for 2 given his injury history. But when he's on no money, you would have had to have offered him 2 to bring him to the club. I just think it's such a great pickup for loss of nothing and adds to the experience. We don't have anyone on that forward line who has experience that is at that age profile. Even if he doesn't play, I think he's maybe got that leadership and, as I said, experience to teach the other guys the tricks of the trade, knowing how young Motlop and Durden are. And even in Owi's sense, while he's not necessarily ridiculously young, he hasn't played a lot of football, so he's still got a bit to learn in that space. And if we didn't address the small forwards, I wouldn't have been ridiculously upset, just hoping that, Motlop and these guys do take that next step in 2024.
Sure.
Now that we have added to it in such a, bargain basement way to do it, bring in Fantasia. If he is fit and if he can recapture any of that form, known goal kicker, it's what the list needed. Gave away nothing. I just think, it's very smart business. Very, very happy with it.
Yeah. The 2 years is definitely a factor, but I know a guy that missed 2 years and then won 2 Colemans. So I think that's all we need to hear for this one. So I'm pumped.
I agree. So let's get into a fun bit, Lockie. We'll get into 2 more things we will cover before we wrap this episode up. First one, I hope you're as much as of a jumper number nuffy as myself.
I really am.
Is great. So I love this because we've got a lot of changes and some new players to take up some numbers. Now, this season, we've had a lot of big numbers for those that are nuffies like us. Up and available, the 2's there, the 4 was available. You got the 25, the 43. Let's go through them one by one. So Lockie Cowan went from the 26 to the number 2. Give me your hot take on that one.
This was a big surprise. As soon as I realized that Dow and O'Brien weren't going to be here anymore, these are the 2 numbers where I'm like, wow, what are they going to do? Are they going to leave either of them open? Are they going to move someone in there, or is a draftee going to get one of them? I'm glad they didn't go that route, but definitely surprised. I didn't think that this would happen, but now he's just got some big shoes to fill. These are Williams' shoes.
Oh yeah, it's interesting. I'm a bit annoyed because poor David Rees-Jones, the hyphen, he's never really had anyone good in his number 26. He finally has someone that I actually rate highly. Gets the number 26, and I'm like, oh, beautiful. This could not work better. Tassie, little connection there as well. And then all of a sudden, he immediately goes out of the number, and no one even takes up the mantle of the great 26. So big disappointed there. But yeah, number 2, was not expecting that move. I need to see him in it because, I don't know, I'm the jumper nuffy where I almost like certain numbers for certain positions and player styles as well. And 2 doesn't really give me, I don't know, maybe it does give me back pocket vibes to a degree, but I don't know if the way Lockie Cowan plays goes with the number 2. However, I don't know. Sure. I like a guy that has a bit of the ambition to go, no, give me the big number. Give me the big spotlight. I want to take it. So yeah, I'm interested to see what he can do in the number 2.
Yeah. He's going to have to prove it now. Yep.
Yeah. And then the big Ollie Hollands going from the 14 to the number 4, which this is one of those, and maybe a Lockie Cowan as well, where if you ended up having the 26 or you had the 14, at least he's made it easy where because sometimes you buy the jumper number, you get that going for this player, they change and you go, oh shit, well, who's taken my number? I don't want this guy anymore. All you have to do is get some navy blue tape off the 6 or the 1, and you've got the number ready to go. So I don't mind this from Ollie Hollands. Again, big balls for him to step up to the plate and take the big number 4.
Good jumper sustainability. You're not wrong. Yeah, this one feels really good to me. Because like I said before, I just got this feeling about him that the progression might just be even steeper than we expect. So get him in that 4. Big Bryce Gibbs style.
I like it. Then we got Orazio taking up the 14. So if you did have the Hollands number and you just want to go the bandwagon now, jump onto Fantasia, you definitely can. Interesting. I maybe didn't see him looking good in a 14, but I don't know. Maybe that's where he kicks his goals. What are your thoughts on that one?
We'll see. It's a big shoes to fill after Brad Fisher. So it's obviously an iconic number for that reason. We'll see. I don't think Fantasia, there's any number that he could look bad in, to be honest. I think he was wearing the 46 in his first year at Essendon when I was watching the highlights the other day, and he even looked good in that. So I'm happy with the 14.
Yeah,
and I guess like the highest vacant number, isn't it? I don't think there's a...
Yeah, I think it would have been because he loved his number 13. So obviously he's like, give me a teens. What's the next available? Yeah, I'll take the 14. I don't know. It doesn't feel like a small forwards number. Again, this is my weird, I see these certain numbers as certain things. And 14 for me, maybe it's just because whenever I think 14, I see Brad Fisher. And I'm like, you're not him. You can't be him.
You'll never
get
be
out
him.
of that. You'll never be him. Get that number out of your back. But no, I'm excited. It is going to be a big one. You had to. It's the next highest number. It's probably what he had to do there. Now, big 20 is available. Big number.
Speaking
and
of big
Elijah
shoes to fill,
has taken it. Do you like this for big Elijah?
if I had my druthers, I probably would have put Elijah in the 14 for a bit of
I didn't mind
Holland's
that.
synergy.
I like it.
But I'm happy with 20. Like I said, they're big shoes to fill with Plough. I think you can do it.
Yeah, it's an interesting one. I do love. I don't know. As soon as it said
what
20,
was he wearing at Gold Coast? Was it 16?
That is a great question. I could not actually tell you that, but I don't know. The 20, I haven't seen it yet on his back.
30,
it feels
36.
like that. He's got a bit of. This is going to come off and sound really, really rude, but he's got a bit of width to him in not a fat way, but like a broadness, like really. He's got a bit around the stoppage, a bit of has that commands authority around it. And I reckon the 20 adds to that. And I don't know, I like it. A bit of Fraser Brown, bit of Jess Southby, get the big 20 on him. And hopefully he can fill those shoes nicely and have another change. Yeah. Can't find his number.
I take it back, actually. I don't like it. Because, so he was wearing the 36 at 36. Gold Coast.
Oh.
And that's vacant.
Vacant. Could have had it.
Own it.
Didn't want it. Nah.
But he's got higher ambitions than that. So I'm okay.
Exactly. Now, Jackson Binns has decided to get rid of the Jack Nunes number and go straight into the 25. Don't like it?
No. 32 to 25, not significant enough of a change for mine.
Not significant. He's taken one of the biggest jumper numbers in the bloody Carlton history. Big Jezza, big Fev.
I understand that.
Big Zach Fisher.
But what's wrong with 32?
I know. I mean, look, I think the 32 did.
You like this change?
A lot. Well, okay.
He hasn't played a game and he's going from 32 to 25. I love Binsey, but I want some more runs on the board before you make a change like this, please.
Okay. Well, I will say that I like if there's ever time to change your number, and this is maybe the issue with an Ollie Hollands, is he's played a full season. So now he's got to play another 100 games to get his name on that locker where he'd already whittled away a couple on that 14. So he's got to be hoping that now. Whereas at least Binsey, if there's ever a time to change, I haven't played a game yet, so I can do it. Very interesting, though, with Binsey. I believe in his under 18 year, he was rocking the number 4. So I reckon he's pretty annoyed there, thinking, oh, gee, I could have had me number. That was what I was wearing. Give me the number 4. But I don't know. 25, it's again, I see 25 as your big key forward now because of what it's meant in the history or big player. I don't necessarily see 25 as a winger, whereas the 32 kind of feels like it suits that style. But again, he's coming in. He's got the balls to step up to the plate and say, no, I'm making the 25 my own. It's exciting. I like to see players ambitious, taking the big numbers. And I don't know. There is that other part of me that, because at the end of the day, the jumper number means nothing. But I do.
What?
Well, as in, it's not going to change the way. Yeah, exactly. It's not going to change the way they play. And I do love
this is all meaningless.
Or the thought of a player going, give me number 70, 78. I want to be the first player that, gets 100 games in that. I want to stand out as making this my own rather than me trying to fill the shoes of someone else. But on the other side of that, Binsey going, no, give me the big numbers. And
just like Moo, I need him to now step up to the plate and then I'll endorse it.
And then we've got 3 that may be a little less significant. We might speed
I have
through
no comment.
These. Matthew Carroll takes the Jackson Binns 32. Monahan takes the 34. Billy Wilson the 35. I'll be honest, there's one bit I don't love there, and that's Billy Wilson taking the 35. Only because he was pick 34. He could have taken 34. It was available.
Like that,
Felt like there was some synergy, some numerology around that. I don't know, but maybe he's just earmarking another high number, hoping someone else gets the flick next year and he runs straight into that. But the big one, Ashton Moir taking the big 43. Do you like that from Ashton?
Now I really do like this. I really like it.
Yeah.
He's going to be better than Kuda. That's what you're telling me.
Why not? Why not take it? I would have kind of liked him weirdly, and this goes against my player number theory in Ashton Moir in the number 4. But there was that video with him getting the jumper off Gibbsy, South Australia, and I just thought there was something in that. Maybe give him the 4.
Sure, yeah.
We need to continue a tradition of having a big 43. Haven't really had one in a long time, so let's make it Ashton's. Let's make every single kid
drive by
from here on out go, yeah, mate, how good is that number 43? Such a big number with Carlton because, one of the best players in the league, Ashton Moir, is wearing it. And they go, no, Kuda used to wear that. And the kid goes, I don't know who that is. I only know Ashton Moir. He's an absolute superstar. And that's what I want. I want these next crop of Carlton players to make these numbers their own, where we're not having to think about players that absolute superstars, but that are so far out of the game that we need our new generation of stars. So why not start to get these guys into these numbers? So yeah, that's it. Let me know your thoughts as well, what you think about these new numbers, if you even care as much as us too. But the last thing that we will wrap this episode up with, which is, look, it was a big item, a lot of contention around this, a lot of discussion. Lockie told me a week or so ago that he was absolutely fuming. He was ready to launch into a rant about the fixture, about how it's all going for 2024. So let's wrap this up and talk about this. You're probably not as heated anymore, but
God, no.
What are your thoughts on the fixture, where we're playing, round 1, round -1, round 0? What are we doing? Do you have any opinion on it at all?
I think the issue that I have in reflection that I had in the last 10 seconds right now, as you G'd me up for this question, is I don't like how they announce the fixture and how they go about doing that. I think a lot of this could have been avoided if they didn't make it such a in blocks, how they gather around, bit of a break. And also Carlton's going to be going to Brisbane to open the season. It's whoa. And maybe that's what they're going for. All publicity is good publicity kind of energy. That's what got me so riled up. I'm going to be going up to Brisbane for that game. I'm excited. We're going to get a win at the Gabba to start the season. If that isn't the most premiership energy you've ever heard, I don't know what is. So I'm a lot calmer on it now. We're going to get our Richmond game. I love the idea of Carlton Richmond as that first game of the season, even though we didn't get it last year. So I'm a bit easier. I wish they would just have gone, here's the fixture, boom, everybody remain calm.
Interesting. I was keen to know what you were angry with, because a lot were angry that we weren't playing Richmond, that was the new tradition and whatnot.
That was the aspect.
And that wasn't really what I was annoyed with, which I find interesting because I wasn't happy with it. But I think when I explain it, it makes a bit of sense. So my issue around it was more, what are we doing, AFL? Because, okay, so the idea was that apparently the NRL was away, but it turns out they're not even away. That's not even the week, so I don't really truly understand it. But we're trying to grow the game in New South Wales and Queensland, get some big blockbuster clashes there to start the season. I absolutely love that. Let's do that. Let's try to pump as much as we can into some of these other states, build them up. We got Tassie coming in a couple of years. Let's start to, stop making this just the Victorian League. And it doesn't have to be Carlton Richmond. Who cares who we play round 1? Let's build the game elsewhere. I have no issue with that. Whoever we play, where we play, no issues whatsoever. Okay. Where my problem lands is, okay, you threw out this, you leaked it into the media to see what the fan reaction was, and it was overwhelmingly against this, being like, what are you doing? Why are you doing this? Why are you calling it round 0? What are you doing, AFL? And they decided to hear that feedback, because there's no other reason you would have leaked it other than to see how it goes. And they went, we'll just do it anyway, which I'm like, why even bother leaking it? But it's just, if we're going to do this, if we're going to make it a big deal in these northern states, why not go the whole way? Why not almost have like a little gather round-esque thing where you're throwing a couple other games in there or going all towards it? Secondly, why are half the teams having a bye?
Yeah.
Why do we not just have that be round one? Why are we calling it opening round? So it's opening round, round one, round two. Half the teams are playing, and then within the first 3 rounds, all these teams that played in opening round, they have to have a bye. When I'm making something, and this is my kind of main point, if you have created something, go for it. And you now have a multitude of other issues that you have created and more problems that you have to create other ridiculous things to fix these problems. Maybe your first idea is dog shit and you got to fix it. Like, I don't understand in this thing why we've made more problems for ourselves. You've now made it a bit more difficult for other teams who may have a bit of momentum because they've played an extra game. You've got to quickly give them an extra buy-in to fix the issue. When all you had to do that fixed and solved all these things is, okay, let's just start at round one, call it round one, play these games in the northern states, go for it. Maybe you need to fix things around with a bye later on to stretch the season out. I don't know what it is, but it feels like they just made so many more issues that they didn't need to make for the sake of this little random thing. And that's my issue. Play whoever you want in round one. I don't care, but
interesting.
Let's just call it round one, have all the teams play. Simple.
Interesting. Yeah, I think that's all very valid. I'm actually just surprised, knowing you for as long as I have, that the what do you call it? The romantic part of it being Carlton Richmond every year to open it isn't something that phases you. I just would have thought that would be something you would be more passionate about.
I think it's more the fact that it hasn't been a thing for that long. Like, in the grand scheme of things, it hasn't always been a thing. We just sort of created it. And I agree. I like that that's a component of the season. Every single year, you have that big blockbuster clash. But I don't know. I think my perspective is just, if you want to grow the game, and the way you think the best way to do that is to really go heavy in those northern states.
Sure.
We've neglected those states for too long. Go for it. Try something different. I just hate the way they've worded everything. But no, we'll play Richmond at some stage and we'll get that going. Those are my weird thoughts. But is there any lasting things that you want to say about 2023, about the season? Or are you happy to wrap things up there, seemingly, for the year?
It's insane what a roller coaster it's been, hasn't it? From how high I'm sure we were in the preseason. I went back and watched, this would have been in September, but I went back and watched some of our episodes from like round 13, 14, 15. And yeah, that was a couple of sad gentlemen. So it's just crazy the way that the year went. And I truly believe that we are the best team in the league now. I think we're going to go all the way next year.
And that is the excitement level that I definitely want. And yes, this is probably going to wrap things up for 2023. We need to plan what we're going to be doing. We've got some ideas, whether they are sort of sprinkled from now to the start of the season, or whether we just cap it now and launch into 2024. That is up for discussion. But as far as all the main content, the recaps, diving into the list, and all of that, that is done for 2023. What a year. One of the best years we've ever seen as Carlton supporters of our age. Let's mark it, enjoy it, look back at it, but let's move on to 2024, where we are moving on to bigger and brighter things and bringing home finally number 17. That is wrapping up this episode, wrapping up the year. We will see you guys next year for a big installment up the bloody baggers. See you guys next time.